Live budget speech on Wednesday at 1400 hours.
Welcome back as we're broadcasting to you live from Cape Town, and today is Budget Day, and it's a big budget. It really is, because this is that new dawn that we've all been talking about. But is it too soon to see this new dawn in the budget? Well, many people saying no, that this is the start of it all, and it certainly should reflect some of the things that have been already brought up by our new President Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course trying to implement them in our budget, and how we as South Africans can also work around them. Well, without wasting any more time, let's get to our guests. We have a lot of guests to get through on this program that are going to be giving us their views on what they expect to happen today. And I'm joined now by Bernard Sachs. He's a senior tax consulting partner at Mazars. Good to see you, Bernard. Thanks very much for being with us.
Good morning, Leanne, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Yeah. A lot of people saying that, perhaps it's too soon to see major policy changes in this short time. But I don't know if you're a part of this school of thought, or is it you have to change whether you like it or not? This is the moment that we need to see things moving forward after a very difficult couple of years.
Leanne, I think Mr. Ramaphosa is going to try and impose as many changes as possible, but the time is rather short. So I think there may be limited opportunity for him. We did see in his Sona speech that his attitude is going to be one of inclusion. It's going to be a very inclusive process. There are going to be workshops, and I think that already in itself indicates that changes are in the air.
Yeah.
And we will see some changes. We won't see everything, though, because the budget itself takes a long time to prepare, and in this short time significant policy changes would not have been possible, in my view.
All right, so let's pretty much focus on the field of your expertise, and that's in taxes, because that's something that I think many South Africans are expecting to happen today. The first one I want to talk about is that increase in VAT. Now, we haven't, and we can't put a year to it, but we haven't seen VAT increase in many years. However, there is great expectations that this is the year that this may happen. It's a bitter pill to swallow and a difficult story to give to South Africans by Minister Gigaba, isn't it?
It is indeed, Leanne. The increase of the VAT rate is one that comes up every year, that question. And this year, I tend to agree with you that this year may well be the year. This year is the year that there's a very significant budget deficit. Funding needs to be found for tertiary education, and I think that VAT is one of the ways in which the minister will try and close that gap. I don't think that he's going to look to close the gap in using just one arrow. I think that he's going to have many arrows in his quiver, and one of them will be a change in VAT in one form or another.
Yeah.
It may not be a general increase. It may be the removal of the exemption on fuel.
Okay.
It may be the introduction of a luxury rate, so a higher rate for luxury goods.
Yeah.
So, for example, a high-value motor car may attract a higher rate than 14%, perhaps 20%.
Yeah. Aiming again at the top earners and those that have got, I suppose, the money. But then again, those are very far and few between, and that's the reality. It's a small pool to take money from.
It is indeed. We saw last year when the marginal rate of income tax was increased, that the tax take wasn't as large as some might have expected. If memory serves me correctly, it was somewhere in the order of 6 to 10 billion by increasing the marginal rate, because there is not that large a pool of people who are in that earning bracket.
Let's talk about capital gains tax. I know that's something that you're also specializing in. What can be maneuvered around that?
Well, a portion of a capital profit is included in taxable income, and when capital gains tax was introduced for a natural person, the initial rate of inclusion rate was 25%, and for a company, for a trust, it was 50%. Now, those rates have crept up over the years, and the inclusion rate for a natural person is now 40%, and for a company or trust is now 80%.
Yeah.
So there's not much maneuverability in the case of a company or trust, but there is a possibility that the 40% inclusion rate for natural persons could increase to 50 or 60%.
So that's going to be quite an interesting one if in fact it does come through. There's a big, talk of personal taxes and that fuel levy, because those are the things that really hit every single South African. We're not really aiming it at that top bracket. Now, what do you think will happen there? Personal tax and that fuel levy, which you and I were chatting a little bit about, saying that perhaps, that might even go down a little bit.
Well, Leanne, the only reason the fuel levy may go down is if the tax exemption, the VAT exemption on fuel is removed. What is also a possibility is that VAT could be introduced on fuel at a lesser rate than the current standard rate. That's something that the minister may wish to think about if and when he does introduce VAT on fuel. And we have to remember that VAT on fuel has an effect right across the spectrum, because it'll affect the person who is driving to work, and it'll also affect the person who's taking public transport to work, because the increase will simply be passed on to them, because the service of transporting passengers by road or rail is an exempt supply. So that becomes an additional cost to the operator, who will pass on that cost to the passengers.
Yeah, that's already something that we've seen the taxi operators speaking out against, and it hasn't even happened yet. So the reaction will be quite harsh. So whichever way you look at it, this is, we seem to say it every year, it's a tough budget, but I've got a feeling that this is one of the toughest ones.
It is one of the toughest ones, but I think it's also one where we might find in coming years that things will ease up a bit.
Yeah.
Because if Mr. Ramaphosa can get a handle on corruption and improving state-owned enterprises, we might find that the demand on the taxpayer decreases.
All right, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thanks so much for chatting to us here on Morning Live. Bernard Sachs is a senior tax consulting partner at Mazars. We take a break. We got a lot more opinions after this. Also, following these cars that are coming in and having a look, seeing who comes, and always on budget day, we managed to grab one or two of the politicians and find out what it is that they're hoping for from the budget. So hopefully this morning will be the same. Do stay tuned.